Hello, this is Mrs. Brown, and welcome to this presentation. We're going to be taking a look at the characteristics of coming-of-age stories. And by the end of this presentation, you should be able to recognize some of the common patterns that you would see in these stories that fit this idea of a coming-of-age. Coming-of-age stories are sometimes known as a Bildungsroman, which is a German translation for a novel of building, or a novel where a character is built up. And a coming-of-age story will often focus on a protagonist who is maturing in some way, usually socially or psychologically, is receiving an education of some kind, usually not at a traditional school, maybe an untraditional sort of education, something that they learn over the course of the story, where they are making discoveries about themselves and about the world, and they're often changed by the events of the story. So by the end of the things that happen in a coming-of-age story, our protagonist is a different person than when they began. Now here's a typical pattern that you'll see in a coming-of-age story. We start at the beginning with the characters introduced to us as very youthful and very immature. Sometimes they literally are very young children. Then there's some sort of a problem that comes up, a challenge that the character has to encounter. And in the middle of dealing with that problem, they go through a struggle as they try to overcome this. Often they have a turning point of some kind, a big decision they have to make, or a particularly difficult obstacle to overcome. And then by the end, the character is seen as different or changed, as grown up or mature, and the significance of the events that they've just experienced and their learning is revealed. Now, often in a coming-of-age story, there are 5 different shifts that you'll see characters make, and you want to watch for these movements. They move from a state of naivete or innocence to a state of knowledge. They move from a state of inexperience to a state of experience. They move from having a false, unrealistic, maybe romantic view of the world to a more realistic understanding of the way things work. And that causes them to move from the state of idealism into realism. And in that process, they go from a state of immaturity to a state of being able to make mature responses and decisions. The coming-of-age story is a very popular genre for literature and for film. You're probably familiar with at least some of these. The Stand By Me story, Perks of Being a Wallflower. The entire Harry Potter series is a coming-of-age story. Mean Girls, almost anything that's been written by John Green. And a lot of very popular stories today that are novels that have been translated into film, like Hunger Games and the upcoming Divergent, all feature this kind of idea of a coming-of-age, where the character, again, starts as a young child, experiences these difficulties, goes through these journeys to become a different person by the end. Usually a coming-of-age story begins when the character is faced with some kind of loss or discovery. This may cause them to lose innocence. They may struggle with the knowledge that the adult world is complex, and they may find that these absolutes, these things that they always thought they could trust in from childhood, no longer exist, or that there is maybe not a right or wrong answer. And this causes the character to question the world as they have always known it. In a coming-of-age story, you can see the growth in the character when you see the clashes between what it is that he or she wants and the rules of society that they come up against. The character may try very hard to establish his or her own rules and may actually be trying to become an active participant in this new world. There are several characteristics that you'll notice in most coming-of-age stories. They may contain some sort of an initiation series. That might be a trial or a rite of passage of some kind. And depending on the story and the setting, this might be a religious ceremony, membership or getting invited to join something, a milestone birthday like 12, 14, 18, 21, getting a driver's license, for example, getting accepted to a new school or program, something along that becomes this rite of passage for the character. Sometimes the stories contain these light bulb moments, an epiphany, a sudden realization of the truth about himself or herself or the world. That may be that moment when they see the world for what it really is, or for the people around them for who they really are. Sometimes you call it epiphany, like this aha moment, and sometimes it can be very sudden in a coming-of-age story. Another thing that you'll find is that the protagonist experiences this loss of innocence, and you may see some common archetypes and motifs, symbols like fruits and gardens, forests and purity, something that's spoiled or gone rotten. There may be a lot of birth images or rebirth images, water, storms, baptisms, tunnels, that idea of a passage of some kind of going from what you were to what you're going to be. Sometimes the character struggles to maintain the innocence and purity and is upset by what they learn in the world around them, which may be full of hypocrisy or phonies, and the demand that the character conform to this universe, and the character may fight against that, trying to stay in that sense of purity. During the course of a coming-of-age story, you'll probably find the character testing boundaries and limits in some way. And this may be coming up against the differences between what's legal and illegal or right and wrong, the familiar things that they know versus strange new ways of doing things, or the parent-child relationship and struggle. And in the process of this, the character is most likely going to experience conflict. This may be confused emotions, doubt, and kind of a desire to maybe not even want to take that journey, that conflict between wanting the simplicity of their childhood, but still wanting the excitement of the adult world. A very common motif in a coming-of-age story is a journey of some kind. Now, this might be a real journey like you see in something like Life of Pi, or it could be a symbolic journey like we're going to watch the character of Scout go through in To Kill a Mockingbird. It often follows the hero's journey model from the mythologies, and usually involves the character having to separate from their family or from the familiar society that they've always known. Now, since our whole overarching theme for this year is this Who Am I, you're going to be watching for many more examples of the coming-of-age motifs and genre throughout the rest of this year. And that's the end of this presentation. See you back in class.